The opinions and views expressed in the following program are those of the speakers and the host, and do not necessarily reflect those of Yoakley Scott Corporation and your sports network.
Yeah, I've been closer to Jesus before, so can you help me out? Oh, can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? But can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? Or can you help me out? Can you help me out? I've been scared to look in my soul. I've been afraid I would follow the road. Yeah, afraid of the things I've been told.
And hello, everybody. Welcome inside a Wednesday, middle of the week episode of Running Point on ysnlive.com. Brought to you, as always, by our good friends in the top right-hand corner of the screen, Greenwood Chevrolet in Austin Town. They go the extra mile for you. We try to do the same on this show every single day. Anthony Hartwig with you. Gary Altizer, like he will be every Wednesday throughout the wrestling season. And Scotty Mincher in the bottom down there. Scotty, we were having some issues before the show. Did we fix them? Can we hear you now?
I
Gotcha.
can hear you guys.
Yep,
Okay, we're good. We're good.
We are good to go, which is golden. That means we're having fun on a Wednesday. Gary, we talked about it last week, was kind of our broad preview of teams to watch out for, players to watch out for, wrestlers to watch out for, and what our expectations of the season was. But this week we have the official, tournaments to preview this weekend. There's a lot of stuff happening. There's a couple of dual meets going on tomorrow. One will be on ysnlive.com. So we have a lot to preview this week. Exciting week in wrestling.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's here already. And most years we would have already been started in the past. We would have been started by now, but the state pushed the start date of the season a week forward. So instead of starting the first weekend in December, we're starting the second weekend in December. And there's a whole lot going on this weekend for the 35 YSN schools that offer wrestling.
Did they do that to kind of counter the football longer season to say, let's give them a little bit more cushion between football and wrestling?
Yeah, I'd imagine that was probably the main reason they did it. Wrestling season is long and it's a grind, so you want to give the kids as much rest as you can. And with how far that football season goes, I know I checked every single YSN school schedule. Most of them were updated, and the ones that went deep into the playoffs, a lot of them aren't starting yet. They're taking a couple more weeks to get started, which I mean, I really don't blame them.
Except South Range, they're going to be one of the teams starting tomorrow. They have a dual meet with Southeast. This one will be broadcasted on ysnlive.com, so I kind of want to start our preview with that one since you'll be able to watch it on the network. Southeast is not a YSN team, but they will be next year, so we better start to get familiar with them. And South Range, definitely one of the premier wrestling programs in the area and in the YSN network, but under a new coaching staff now with Coach McCullen, retiring after last year. What do you expect from another program in South Range that is welcoming a new era of a new coaching staff? We saw football not miss a beat under Coach Rock after Coach Yeagley left. What's wrestling have to do to not miss a beat after another historic coach hangs it up and steps down after a really long, good run with that program?
Well, congrats to Coach Frank Giordano for taking over that program. He's been around that South Range program forever. He's a familiar face there. I think it's going to be a seamless transition for him and his staff that he's got put together. What do they have to do? They just have to keep doing what they've been doing. They've been great. They've done well every year for I don't know how many years now. Mr. McCullen did an amazing job there. Levi Hiley as well before him. They built that South Range team to what it became and what it is now, the state champions of the dual tournament. A lot of state placers, state qualifiers. I checked; they have 24 guys on their roster. That's a very healthy size roster for a Division III school. Southeast also has exactly 24 kids on their roster as of right now, and both teams have 2 state-ranked wrestlers. So this ought to be a really fun duel. I really think that the South Range is just going to keep humming along the way that they have been. I don't see any reason for them to not keep going. They're 2 ranked wrestlers. They got the number 12 ranked 120 pounder in Caden Welker, and the number 2 ranked 175 pounder Tyson Seaschultz. Seaschultz, he came out last year with a bang as a freshman. Really went. He went and met all the expectations that people had for him and then some. So I think they're both going to have great years. Southeast has the number 10 ranked 113 pounder Dom Kimball and the number 3 ranked heavyweight Preston Bello. So I'm imagining that these teams are probably going to want Kimball and Walker to go at it. Kimball's at 113, Welker at 120. I'd imagine maybe Welker wants to certify at 113. Maybe he comes down to that tonight, depending on when they got their alpha, or Kimball may bump up. I'd imagine we'll probably see that match. Hopefully, anyway, that will be a really good match. And at heavyweight, the Bello kid, I look for, not in this anyway, but maybe he'll be wrestling Dallas McCracken sometime here in the near future. But I think this is going to be a fun duel. And shout out to Chris Colucci covering that. Good luck to him in that first match of the season.
When both teams have 2 state ranked guys, but they're not lined up with each other with the weight class. You have two state ranked guys on South Range, but different state ranked guys in the weight classes for Southeast. So you kind of give each team the edge in those 2 matches where they're putting their state ranked guys in the match. The rest of the night, it's got to be, who's going to get those matchups between guys who maybe aren't same ranked, but by no means are they not good. But who's going to win those ones between the hedges per se, as you might be able to say with 2 state ranked guys probably having the edge in their matches.
Yeah, well, like I said, maybe we'll see Welker and Kimball go at it. I don't know. It depends on what's best for their team.
Right.
If you're allowed to bump up 1 weight class in Ohio, so if they both are where they're expected to be, then one of them will have to bump up. If not, who wins? It depends on the depth. And also, you got to remember, this is the first match of the season and the first day of actual competition. So a lot of teams have guys who are going to be coming down in weight. But if this is the first match and they just got their alpha done, you can't lose. You can only lose 1.5% of your body weight a week. There might be some empty weight classes, so that's going to matter too. So it depends on a million factors. Probably the most experienced team whose weights are where they need to be sooner will probably win this matchup.
Pirates, Raiders, they're both burgundy and gold, and they both have South in the title. It's about as familiar as you can get. Ravenna Southeast making the trip down to South Range, as you said. Chris Colucci will have the call for that dual match. Not the only one that's going to be happening tomorrow, though. West Branch taking on United. Props to United taking the challenge and saying we'll go right at a bigger school in West Branch and do what we can to compete in the matches that we can get on the mat for. What do you see out of this one, Gary?
Well, last year United won this by 1 point. Talked to Coach Bo Marriage, and I think he's pretty familiar with the guys at West Branch. So I would expect another really close one. Looks like both teams have 21 or 22 on their team. And then both have some female wrestlers too. So I imagine they're going to get their female wrestlers matched up to wrestle as well in this duel. This will be a fun one. The talk of this one, though, is obviously the number 1 ranked heavyweight in Division III, Dallas McCracken. I know everybody is going to be keeping their eyes on him this season, seeing what he can do and how he'll open up the season. But I imagine this will probably be another close one. Coach Bo Marriage, he always does a nice job of getting the kids out for the team. And, he's got 30 kids on the team with his female wrestlers. That's a very, very healthy program. So, yes, he's going up. West Branch is a bigger school district. But I don't think that really matters here when you've got the same size roster and probably the same experience.
30 is very good, I think, for a United team. That's probably the biggest non-football roster their sports teams have, to have 30 in one sport. Outside of football, it might just be the biggest sport they have roster size wise, because I don't think their basketball team would touch 30, and definitely their baseball team and softball team probably don't touch 30, and I'm guessing their volleyball team wouldn't touch 30 either. So outside of football, maybe the biggest roster sport they have. It's a big props to Coach Beaumarriage and what he's been able to do down there at United, building a strong program that people want to get involved in. Then we have a big weekend, Gary, where a lot of teams are going to be in action over the weekend. What are some things we have to watch out for?
Okay, well, the biggest thing in the high school wrestling world is the Ironman tournament this weekend at Walsh Jesuit. I checked; it's usually the second week of the season. It looks like it's going to be this week this year because the state, did push things, back a week. So that's the biggest thing in the high school wrestling world. There aren't. I checked the seeds. There were no seeded wrestlers locally. I don't know how many local wrestlers will be there. I haven't seen the brackets or anything yet. It's only Wednesday, but that's definitely something to keep an eye on. But I did check with the YSN schools. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different tournaments YSN schools will be participating in this weekend. And the biggest one of them, as far as how many YSN schools will be involved, it looks like the Ashton Hind tournament in Madison at Madison High School. Orange, Grand Valley, Edgewood, Salem, Austintown, Fitch, Conneaut, Jefferson, and Boardman will all be there for that one. As far as the smaller school tournaments, Malvern, the Hornet Holiday Tournament, Wellsville Southern, United, East Palestine, Western Reserve will all be there. Crestview will be at Beechwood. Beaver Local, they're sending their teams to a couple of different ones. They're going to a tournament in Kentucky. I'm imagining they'll probably take their best kids down there. And then they'll also be at Cambridge. The Dry Tech duels in Pennsylvania will see Canfield and Girard. The Rick Link Invitational at Union Local, all the way down south in Belmont, Ohio, will have East Liverpool and Edison. Fitch duels will have Fitch and Howland. Corey Rawson will see Jefferson. The Heart of Ohio will see Lakeside, and the Hawken Invitational Pie Valley will be there.
Let's talk first about where you're going to be. Right, you're going to be in the Hornet Holiday Classic down there at Malvern. A lot of other schools that you're pretty familiar with down there as well. What are you seeing out of that one?
Well, Malvern's got a nice team. They've had a nice team the last few years. They got several state-ranked kids. They won the tournament last year pretty comfortably, if I remember correct. I imagine that will probably be the same this year. I'm sure United will be challenging them. I'm not sure what other outside schools will be there, but it's a good small school tournament. There'll be a lot of schools, Division III schools there, and there'll be some nice competition. But I would say Malvern would most likely have to be the tournament favorites as of right now. But that depends. They are near the Canton area, and you never know who's going to show up from that area. There are a lot of bigger schools there and a lot of good wrestling traditions there. I remember one year we were there and Minerva showed up. And we weren't expecting that. Minerva has a really good Division II program. So things like that could happen. But as of right now, I'd say Malvern they're the favorites.
When do you know who's going to show up? I mean, do you have time to prepare? Like you said, you Minerva just showed up. Did you you were there and then all of a sudden, hey, look, Minerva's here, or did you know in advance that Minerva was coming?
So it just depends. They'll usually have the brackets released the day before or so you can find out, a day before, maybe 2 days at the most. If everybody gets their rosters in early, they use Sakurasoft Systems. The website there, which is an amazing website for wrestling tournaments because of everything that it tracks. And it shows you scores. It shows you, you can even go in and look at each period and what scores there were, takedowns, reversals, those kind of things. So it's a great site. So if they give us access early to look at the brackets, we'll be able to know then. I'm guessing Friday will probably be when we'll find out, which is just the day before. And the day before, you're trying to get your team ready. So it's tough to even really prepare. You can get a quick glance, but then you don't know who's going to make weight. And
Right.
you don't know what kids you woke up sick and how they'll have to shuffle things around. So you never know.
Just show up to the mat with your best
That's it.
best you can do. That's all you can do. Gary, the other thing I wanted to ask, I'm still fairly new to the wrestling sports, and when you said this, I was kind of like, oh, this is interesting. Beaver Local, taking their team to two different tournaments. You said probably their best players going down to Kentucky. you can do that. You can split your team up a little bit and take one portion of your team down to one tournament and another portion of your team down to a different one.
Yeah. If you can have a couple schedules, the state allows you to have a couple schedules, and each student is allowed 20 total points. We talked about that last week. How every match has a point total assessed to it, as long as the wrestler doesn't go over 20 points total for the season by sectionals. Yes, you can do that. I mean, Austintown Fitch is hosting the Fitch Duels, but then they're also sending some of their wrestlers to that Madison tournament as well. You get big teams like that, you have to do that if you want to keep them on the mat. There's some teams that have three teams, some even more than that. Who knows? You get those bigger Division I schools where some of these teams will have 50 kids on their team or more. You've got to get them on the mat to keep them fresh, to keep them interested, and to keep them in shape, because you want to have your backups ready too, because you never know who's going to get hurt, who's going to get sick, who's going to move weights, or who's going to win a wrestle off.
So kids have point limits. Do the teams have point limits too? Like, does your actual team have a point limit of how many things they can do?
Well, it's just 20. So
20.
the kids can do 20.
You
Yeah.
get points for both that you send your kids to, right? So Beaver Local will get a point total for the Kentucky tournament and the other one they're going to, but they'll get both those points added to their team limit, right?
No. So,
No?
I mean, it'll be added each schedule. So
Okay,
each schedule
gotcha.
has 20 points. Yeah.
Gotcha. See, we're learning. We're me and Scotty on the train, holding on for dear life. Speaking of Scotty, I want to bring him into the fold. Scotty, what kind of things are you looking for that you want Gary to answer this week?
Yeah. So Gary, last week you kind of talked about your a little bit about your team, and you talked a lot how they were green, and I just wanted to know for you, because it is like any sport. Um, there's always at the beginning of the season, there's overreactions. It seems one way or another, but it's a long season to go. So I guess for you, how important is it, like these matches? If you had to put a percentage on it, how important is it that you get off to a good start? Do you think it's one of those things, if you struggle early, it's not really a big deal because you have a lot of time to kind of rebound?
That's a good question. It definitely, it really depends on the kid, on the individual. And most times, it's even in life in general, if you get off to a good start, it seems to get the ball rolling. And usually, in my opinion, that's because of your confidence. Your confidence is up, but it by no means determines anything. You'll see kids start slow and they'll hit a stride and go like a lightning rod into the sectional and postseason tournaments, or you'll see kids start fast and really come out of the gate doing well, and then struggle and then fade away at the end of the season. It just depends on the kid. The season is long and it's a grind. I feel like once you get towards the later part of the season, you kind of have to reel back some in practice, and you kind of have to give the kids a break, because it is such a physical sport. It's 100% contact. So it's constant contact. So it really depends. You just have to kind of balance out what you're expecting of the kids, what they're doing in practice. Mentally, you got to keep them sharp by keeping them loose. I really firmly believe in this sport, the more loose that you are, the better you are, no matter what. I think you can say that about any sport, really. But in the grand scheme of things, one tournament, if you don't do well, it doesn't mean anything. Especially, I mean, you get into late February, the last Saturday in February, you're at your sectional tournament. What happened on December 9th doesn't matter.
I'm going to flip that question on its head, because there are a lot of teams that come out and do have a lot of success early. Maybe it's even success that they don't even expect to have early, because they feel like, they have growth to do, or they have some kids that are question marks and they come out and they do really well. What kind of a benefit is it to get out to a really good start and then have that wiggle room where if you still have kids that you want to, have grow or learn more stuff, hey, we got that wiggle room now because we got off to a pretty good start and we maybe stole some wins that on paper we shouldn't have won?
Just a personal example. A few years ago, our first tournament of the year, we had been waiting for that year. We had worked. We knew that that was the team. We had some eighth graders who came up to be freshmen who had success in junior high and before, were now on the roster. And then we had some seniors who were coming in and had great junior years. And we won the first tournament of the year. And I'll tell you, for us, for a small school team, that when I took over the team, I had a real inexperienced, not only a green team, but like all first year team. To get to that point, it was a really hard grind for us to get there. And what it really did, I think it made the kids believe in us and who we were as a team and that we could do good things. And we ended up winning 2 more tournaments that year. We had a great dual record. We went to the regional semifinals. So, we had a great season. And I really, truly believe that first tournament of the season, we went in, not only did we win it, we had 2 kids that didn't make weight, and I think we still won the tournament by like 50 points or something. So I mean, we really, really did well, and I think that helped us. Does that give us wiggle room? I don't know if it gave us wiggle room because I had exactly 14 weight classes. I had 16 kids on the roster, and by some miracle of God Himself, they were spread out, and I was able to fulfill a full roster for just one match. But it was the first time ever I was able to do that. And after that, I filled of the 14, 12, or 13. But I never have any wiggle room as far as filling the weight classes go. But I did feel like it bought me some wiggle room that, hey, if we don't do well later, we know that we have in the past and we can in the future. So I think mentally it did a lot for us. And if you're a team that, like us, who had been working and working and working and trying to get better, and it finally happened, I think that was huge for us. If you're a team that's coming from success and you don't do well the first week, I don't think it's going to matter much.
Before we end this segment of the show, I do want to talk about the big tournament that a lot of YSN teams are going to be at in Madison. I know we went over the teams that will be there real quick, but a lot of YSN teams there. What do you see out of that tournament? Who are some big names that you're kind of looking at for the YSN teams that are going to be down there? What kind of things go into be doing well in a big tournament like that down at Madison?
This is the first I've heard of the tournament. I've seen. I looked at last year with the teams that were there. I didn't recognize many of them at all. This must be something fairly new, or it's new to this area. With this many local teams going, I don't know. It probably is something that fit a lot of teams' schedule, and I'm guessing it's probably going to have a lot of teams. You're looking. I bet you there's going to be 20 teams there. I mean, Fitch is there. Obviously, that's the biggest school in the YSN network as far as wrestling goes. Fitch and Boardman, the 2 biggest schools that'll be there. Those are the ones that I would be looking out for. And then Salem, I checked Salem's roster. They got over 40 kids on their roster. I mean, they always do a great job of getting a big turnout on as far as kids coming out for the team. But man, that's really a feat for them to be able to get that many kids out. That was more than I saw on pretty much. I think that was the biggest one that I saw of all the schools that I looked at. So I'll be interested to see how they do, because you're talking they're going 2, maybe 3 guys deep at each weight class, depending on where the weights spread out.
Can't wait for the start of the season. And Gary, when we come back next week and we have episode 3 of season 3, we're going to have a lot of results to talk about. That's always the fun part, seeing how these kids do. When the results come in, we'll know who to bring on the show. We'll know who had the big performances. So we're going to start to bring wrestlers on starting next week. We're going to try to get one every week if the schedule miraculously works out like it did last year. I wanted to shout out the wrestlers last year because every single wrestler that came on, like, it was miraculous. I couldn't believe it. Every one of them had availability at 1:00, and we didn't have to pre-record anything. We were to bring them all on live. It just made our lives a little bit easier. If we have to pre-record, by all means, we will. We'll do whatever it takes to get some of these kids on the show. But to have all of them be able to go right at 1:00 was one of those things that you just can't explain. It was a universe God kind of thing. Like, okay, let's do it.
Well, wrestlers aren't. I'll say it again. I'll say it tomorrow, and I'll say it the day after that. They don't get the recognition they deserve.
Yep.
With the amount of work that's put in. And, it's not like football where you got practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You do a walkthrough on Thursday. You have a game Friday. You watch film Saturday, off Sunday. We're practicing Monday through Friday. and then we're wrestling for 12 hours on Saturday, and we're doing that all year. Or like basketball, where they got 2 games a week, so they're getting a break from practice. These kids are grinding every single day, and not only they're doing that, they're trying to watch their weight, and
Exactly.
they're trying to do things while they're completely and totally physically exhausted, and keeping up with everything else in life. So it's great that you guys started this segment, and we can bring these kids on and really shine some light on them. And now with us being able to get some duels in some tournament finals broadcasted, this is going to be great for the area and for the sport as a whole.
Gary, before we get out of this segment, I do want to give you a chance to give yourself some pub, because I saw you recorded one on over the weekend, a show by yourself, and I want you to give a chance to promo that and let everyone know what's going on with you and Bailey.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Thanks. Yeah, so me and my buddy Jim Bailey, he's a lifelong friend of mine from Wellsville, and he has a lot of experience in sports betting now that it's legal in Ohio. Him and I will be doing a show called Cherry Pickers on Sunday mornings at 11. I know myself, on Sunday mornings, I'm always looking for like some NFL pregame shows. And now that I can sit on my phone and I can make some bets on the NFL games, that's what we'll be talking about every week. And I hope to continue it on through after NFL season, because there is a USFL and XFL merger to a new UFL football league, and even Canadian football. If you're a football junkie like myself, I keep track of all football that I can. We'll be talking about it. It's a lot of fun, and it's something new in the area and in the state. So we will be there every Sunday morning. If you want to check us out, we'll be going live at 11.
Check it out. Episode 1 happened last week, and now episode 2 coming up on Sunday at 11. And you got a lot of big matchups in Week 14 for the NFL. I know my Chiefs are going up against Buffalo, and they're, I think, a 2.5 point favorite in Arrowhead, and they're up and down. I don't know if they're a smart bet every week. You never know what Chiefs team is good.
That Kansas City team it's funny. That defense is a lot better than they get credit for. But I think that I think they put too much on Patrick Mahomes' shoulders. Last year he did. They won a Super Bowl. Who was his best receiver? Juju. I mean,
Juju, and then he got hurt. So really, our Super Bowl, his receivers were Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, and that's pretty much like, and then Juju at the end. But like, Hardman got hurt last year. He was supposed to be a big factor. He's hurt again this year. Tony's hurt now. There's a lot. There's a lot on Patrick Mahomes. Luckily, we have a running game that I think Andy Reid sometimes forgets about.
Right.
Like, we do have Pacheco back there who had like 120 yards against Green Bay.
Well, and Kelsey's losing a step. I mean, let's be honest. He really is. He's not. When you see him out there running, he just doesn't got the same kind of burst and explosion that he has before. And when you take a half a step away from a guy who gets all the attention, that really he's still playing well. Don't get me wrong. But if he can't go there and you've got these other guys hurt, I know the Rice kid, he's going to be something.
He's going to be good. He's going to be good.
He's just not there yet. In the second half of these games, the Chiefs, for whatever reason, they just have a hard time moving the ball and getting the ball into the end zone. And I don't know if it's because, hey, you get the scripted plays out of the way. Now we kind of know what you're doing this game. We're taking away your best guy. You really don't have a secondary guy to go to. It's Mahomes running around trying to make something happen. So I don't know, but I'm not counting them out in that AFC. Buffalo is so up and down. They've had the worst turnover luck ever, and Baltimore is just flying under the radar for whatever reason. Nobody's talking about them, which is nuts to me.
Well, I think if I had to guess, it's probably because they always with Lamar Jackson as QB, they always find a way to not win the big game that they need to win, whether it be in the regular season or the playoffs. They find a way for Lamar not to play well. He hasn't really won one playoff game. He's had a couple of mental breakdowns in playoff games. So I think people are like cautiously optimistic on the Ravens. Like, okay, are they? Is this going to be a typical Ravens, unraveling that they always kind of have? And I'm sure Gary will talk about all that and more on Sunday's episode of Cherry Pickers, 11 o'clock. Find it. And can't wait for that. Gary, thank you so much for hopping on and being on episode 2 of season 3 of Wrestling Wednesdays with Gary Altizer. And we can't wait to bring you back on next week's episode. I told you in the private chat, you are always welcome to hop on the rest of the show if you have time. If you don't have time, that's cool too. But we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk some basketball from last night and we'll see what's on Scotty's mind for the day, which is always fun on a Wednesday. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Running Point, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown.
21 News delivers the news as it happens, using the latest technology from where it happens.
Live here outside the Mahoney County.
On air, online,
Wednesday afternoon weather update.
Very dangerous.
and on the 21 News social media platforms.
I'm on the road right now.
21 News, the Valley's only locally owned source for trusted news since 1953.
Craftsmanship to us is 60 years of pride and dedication.
Passed down from generation to generation.
The hardwood floors that your kids take their first steps on.
The solid wood doors you quietly close at night.
The things we create day in and day out are the products that end up turning your house into a home.
At Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods, uncompromising quality and craftsmanship built our business.
And it will keep us moving forward for generations to come.
Going the extra mile at Greenwood Chevrolet means we want to take care of the community that takes care of us too.
And we have to work together always. And that's how you stay in business for 40 years.
You know, I love being a helper because when I help somebody, it makes me feel good.
It means a lot that I can make a difference in others' lives.
So I will do everything I can and just being there for them every step of the way.
I want them to know within the first 5 minutes that they could depend on me. That's what going the extra mile means, only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
Before the lights come on, before the workday begins, before a long day is ended, or it's time to have fun. It all starts with the people at Joe Dickey Electric. From replacing a light fixture in your home to building a substation for your business, no job is too big or too small. The people of Joe Dickey Electric power them all. Joe Dickey Electric, over 60 years of powering the Mahoning Valley.
Welcome back to Running Point on ysnlive.com, brought to you as always by our good friends over at Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. Find them in the top right-hand corner of the screen right there. They go the extra mile for you, so you don't have to. We try to do the same here on this show every single day. And Gary Altizer with us on a Wednesday, so is Scotty Mentor down there. Quickly, I want to give a shout-out to Western Reserve for the swag. I will always represent our schools if they give us swag to represent, and want to shout out the Blue Devils for giving me this in the end of spring, and softball team gave me this. Obviously, that was summer, so it was way too hot to wear the long sleeve, dry fit, long sleeve T-shirts in the summer. But now, getting kind of chilly, so I can break out the new Western Reserve stuff as they gear up for their basketball season. And like I said, love representing our schools and our communities. So, if you got swag, we'll put it on Running Point, no problem. Let's get into some hoops. We had a full slate of basketball last night. Boys took center stage. After last night, everybody has their season underway as we saw a couple of teams play their first game of the year. So now we can officially say that every basketball season is underway in the YSN family. The scoreboard brought to you by Burnett Pool, Spas, and Hot Tub. Whether you're at one of our games or watching one of our broadcasts, you don't want to look away for too long, and the YSN scoreboard is a great tool for the fans to quickly get live updated scores from the YSN family schools. We have a team behind the scenes that is dedicated to making this as live updated as possible, so you don't have to wait until midnight to get your final scores in. And you can just check real quick on how your team or maybe your rival is doing at any given time. We will do the first three rows and then scroll over to the last one like we always do. And we'll start with Beaver Local, looking really mad after their loss to Western Reserve on Friday. They trounced Crestview 74-42, the final score, one of the more lopsided games of the night last night. Then we go from that to a pretty competitive one for a little bit, but then Newton Falls able to pull away. They're a team that won the MVAC Great Tier last year. They're trying to do the same. 47-26, the final score. Struthers, guys, outscores Western Reserve 16-4 in the fourth quarter to run away with this one. The final score 60-40. Wildcats get the 20-point win. It was a lot closer than that for most of the game, but that fourth quarter, the Wildcats found another gear and put it in the rearview mirror. Got the win by 20. Mineral Ridge opened their season with a home game against Champion. Champion gets the 10-point win, 60-50. I was really impressed with Mineral Ridge, though. 3 of their returning starters, their only 3 returning starters, are all hurt right now. So they had a roster last night that was full of kids that probably did not expect to get a lot of varsity time or nearly as much as they're going to get now this season. And they just fought their hearts out, tried to keep them in this game. Champion was up for the task. There were a couple of times when it felt like the Flashes were going to run away with the game. Mineral Ridge never let them. And even though they lost, I think Coach Harper down there at Mineral Ridge has to be pleased with a lot of young kids, a lot of kids that are green, that have a lot to learn, just playing hard and giving themselves a chance to come back and win that game. They do drop it by 10, though. Marky Nolan for the Flashes drops 24 for Champion, and he was your player of the game in the 60-50 win. Garrettsville Garfield fell to Rootstown. Final score there, 58-36. Tough one for Garfield to open up the season against a Portage County rival. Wyndham gets the narrow victory over Ashtabula St. John, 62-61. A thriller down there in Wyndham. Bomber hanger, letting things loose. Lisbon's offense is still very, very good. They have another 70-plus point performance. They win over East Palestine, 75-42. Lowville falls to Southeast, 43-29. Camel and Boardman get together. It is Boardman with a 10-point victory over a very talented Camel team. Hard to hold that squad to below 50 points, and they did it by holding them to 40. Howland and Champion, really a good game, but Cheney and Howland. Cheney doing too much, had too much firepower, and they win 53-47, the final score there. Defensive matchup in Poland. They held Springfield to no first quarter points. It was 11-0 after the first quarter. That defensive mindset continued as Poland gets to win 43-27 over the Tigers. Badger bounces back from their loss in the first game of the season. They get the win 75-61 over Fairport Harding. We have Lakeview all over Liberty, 61-36, the final score there. A great one in Youngstown, Cardinal Mooney and JFK, but the Eagles are the ones that pull away late and get the 71-59 win. It was a lot closer than 12 points for most of the game. It was actually tied after the end of 3 quarters, but JFK made a few more plays in the fourth and pulled away with a comfortable 12-point victory. Heartland Christian and Jackson Milton score a lot of points, but it is Heartland that gets the win in the highest score so far in the Ysn family this season, 84-70. Heartland gets the win over the Blue Jays. We go down to Lincoln Park and Beaver area. This was a game that we had on the network, 2 non-YSN teams, but it was because they were playing in an event that also featured a YSN team. So we had this one on the network, gave both the communities a little bit of taste of what YSN is about. And we saw that 97 points scored by the Lincoln area. And if they were in the YSN family, they would have the highest score in the family, 97-67, the final score down there. United and Marlington get together, and that's a big matchup for United to go down there and test themselves. Marlington gets to win 62-31. I think that was a game where United just wants to give their kids a measuring stick. Like, this is the level of basketball we have to play if we want to do something special this year. So exposing the kids to that early on in the season, no harm, no foul for United. Austintown Fitch, they go to Canton Central Catholic and get the win 66-51, the final score there. And we'll go down to the girls basketball, and then we'll scroll over to that final row. Girls basketball last night being played in Ashtabula County. Jefferson with the 36-31 win over Lakeside. Wellsville still undefeated on the year, 49-22. They beat Sebring. And then Grand Valley gets the win over Wycliffe, 42-35. Let's scroll over to the other side, the last row. On the Brunette Pool Spas and Hot Tub scoreboard, we go up to the top. LeBray with a great performance. They had 3 players in double figures. They win 75-63 over Niles. Columbiana, all over Southern Local, 72-49, the final score there. Warren Harding gets the best of East, 72-47, the final score there. Latonia, their first win in over 650 days for the boys basketball program, in their first win over Wellsville and even longer, 48-46. They get the win. That's a great monumental step for that boys program. You could tell the first two games they played, like, this team's getting wins this year. And they get one for Wellsville, 48-46. They nip the Tigers in home in the Bears Den. How about this one? Down to the wire in South Range in the Thriller Dome, like it always is. Last year they had 9 one-possession games, and South Range has another one. They win on the free throw line with 3.3 seconds to go over West Branch, 51-50. Landon Moore plays the hero this time around for the Raiders. And then, last but not least, East Liverpool's offense, way too much for Carrollton. They win 73-40, the final score there. So, guys, the scores have been announced. They've been said. What are some of your takeaways? I'll start with Gary. What scores kind of popped up to you when you saw the boys basketball scores from last night?
It looks like Columbiana is probably the best team in the OAC from what I know. I don't get to follow boys basketball as much as I'd like to because I'm busy with wrestling. That was the first one. East Liverpool seems to be a good offensive team. They seem to be clicking on all cylinders there. Those are the two things that came to mind with me. And then that South Range comeback, that sounded like a really exciting game.
I know you don't want to talk about the Wellsville game, but talking from a point where Latonia trying to turn their culture around, trying to build a winning culture, and getting a win very early in the season, what do you think that does for the kids in that locker room to say, hey, all the work we put in the summer, this new coaching staff and Coach Hine, it's easier to buy in when you get the results, right? It's easier to buy into what a new coach is selling when you see the results on the floor. You went down the Southern, you lost by 2 in a game that you probably could have won, had opportunities to win, but a very competitive game against the Southern team that took you to the woodshed last year. And then the next game around in the league, you go to Wellsville, you welcome in Wellsville, I should say, and you beat them by 2. I mean, getting the results is something to be proud about for Latonia.
Yeah, absolutely. I know those kids have been working hard, and they come up really close there on the previous 2 games. It was the first game for Wellsville. It was the first game for head coach Nate Scott, and he lost a lot last year. I believe there was only 1 full-time starter returning this year. So he's figuring his lineup out. The Tigers missed 4 free throws in the last 30 seconds. But Latonia did what they had to do. They hit a bunch of threes, and they were playing their hearts out that entire game. I watched the whole game. They played all 4 quarters as hard as they possibly could. And, they did what they had to do to get a win. I'm sure that's big for them, being that, they haven't had much success on the football field either. That's got to feel good for them. And they're young, too. I mean, a lot of those guys from what I saw are freshmen and sophomores.
Yeah.
So, they're going to be building on this, and I'm sure it's getting the community excited.
Things could be taking a turn in Latonia. Scotty, what were some of the scores that popped up for your mind and that you were really interested in?
Yeah, I think LaBrea was really impressive in their win over Niles, and they're just the team I think going forward that I'm really gonna be keeping an eye on. They had a really balanced attack last night, won convincingly, and then the thing that sticks out, it may be obvious to some people, but another thing that sticks out to me is Poland. It's funny how some things never seem to change. When I was in high school, they were known, and their spinach or their bread and butter was their defense. And another great performance last night against Springfield. So Poland really bringing the defense. And don't get me wrong, I love the 3 ball and I love to see scoring, but I love me some defense in basketball because a lot of it is the effort. And when you see that effort out there and the kids just grinding it really puts a smile on my face as a fan.
Guys, one of the things that popped out for me is like the South Range last year was a team that it seemed like they had something about them that they could just win close games. They won so many games at the buzzer. They had 9 one-possession wins. when you look at that team having that mentality again, I'm sure that they thought last year was kind of a fluke. I mean, how many teams get into that many close game buzzer beater situations in one season? But here they are again. They trailed West Branch almost the whole game. They find their way back to a tie game. They have the ball with, I think, 20 seconds left. They work it inside. They get an offensive rebound and a foul. Go to the free throw line. They hit 1 and 2 with 3.3 seconds left. And it's like South Range is just doing it again. The mindset of having to be able to win in close game situations, that is something that is going to make this Raiders team dangerous, because anytime you get them in a close game in the fourth quarter, that's got to be in the back of other teams' minds. Like, man, how many times have they hit buzzer beaters to win? Or how many times have this roster, these kids, because it's a lot of the same kids from a year ago, how many times have these kids has come out with the wins that are 50-50 wins in the world of sports? And it seems like in South Range, it's more like 70-30.
It's got to be in their heads now, and I mean that in a good way. They've got to know, hey, we can win close games. We're not out of anything, and we've got the upper hand. It builds on itself, and it seems like if they've done it this much, they did it last season. I think they start, if I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't start out so hot last season, and they came back the second half and had a great second half of the season, pulled off a bunch of close wins. If you can win the close, I had a coach tell me once, if referring to wrestling, win all the matches you should and a couple you shouldn't. And if you do that, you're going to do really well. And it seems like South Range winning all the games that they should and a couple they shouldn't, and then a couple more, it looks like. So that could really carry over us into the postseason.
You're right. Last year, they were off to an 0-5 start. They had some stuff going on off the floor as well. Got all that cleared up, had like a reset button they hit. And then they went on, they won the NE8, and they did it with a lot of buzzer beaters, a lot of last-second wins. And they do it again last night with a win over West Branch in a game that they trailed most of the time. And they found a way to win. Props to the Raiders. They'll continue their season and see if they can do the same. Scotty, now we're going on to the segment of the show where we ask what's on your mind. We do it every week. It's dangerous. It's wild. Scotty, what are you thinking about today?
Yeah, so I was thinking, guys, a lot of controversy this past week with college football and the final rankings that came out and the choices for the playoff field, and it kind of created a buzz. Everybody's been talking about it. A lot of people, I think not even a lot of people, just about everybody seems to think Florida State got screwed. And DJ made a post about this that I thought he hit the nail on the head, saying the NCAA is a business and they don't care about the best story or getting the the necessarily the feel good story as a champion. It's about the money, and the SEC is more of a, it's definitely more of a draw than what Florida State's been now over the years for a while. So I wanted to know, I guess, just from you guys, what are your thoughts, and do you think money is really starting to, I mean, it's always been a factor, but do you think it's starting to really turn more people away than maybe we thought there would be, 10, 15 years ago? And we've talked about it being a problem with the OHSAA too, not caring about the student athletes. But what are your guys' takes on all of this, and Florida State being undefeated from a Power 5 conference and not getting in?
Gary, you want to take this first, or you want me to?
I mean, really, if we're being honest about it, this committee, what's happening next year? They're going to the 12-team playoff, am I right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
12 teams.
So what consequences are coming from this? They know whatever happens this year, it's not going to matter next year because we're going to 12. And their case was, Bama beat the number one team in the country, I guess, and they didn't feel that Florida State's resume was good enough. Which I mean, the committee doesn't have an easy job either. Let's be frank here. That it's not easy picking 4 teams. In my opinion, it's really crazy that they still do this in 2023. You only have 4 teams. I mean, it's nuts. But then they paint themselves in a corner because of this, and they have a situation like this year that happens. But has money changing things? It always has. It's just becoming more apparent now and transparent because of the internet and the way information flows. And people also have more of a voice now than they ever did in the past. And this is no surprise to me. I don't know why anybody's shocked about this. I don't know why anybody's outraged. I don't know why anybody is even batting an eye. I mean, as soon as I saw Bama beat Georgia, I knew what was happening. I knew what was coming. And their justification was they beat the number one team in the country, the 2-time defending national champs. And that's just the way that it was going to be. The other 3, they had to put in Texas. If you want Bama in, then you have to put Texas in. I mean, why it's still 4 at this point, I don't know. I still don't get it. Why it took so long to get to 12, and it shouldn't even be 12. It should be 16. I don't get the 12 thing with the buys. What point is there in that? Why have the buys? I don't know. But for me, there's no surprise here. Yes, I think money is involved in this, and it always has been. It wasn't an easy choice for them, but you have to lay in the bed that you make with the NCAA. And I'm just not a big college fan because of things like this and the silly rules that they have. And everything with the NIL. I'm glad these kids are finally being able to make some money, but it also is changing the sport, and we have to accept that. It's only going to get crazier.
So here's, I kind of went on. I don't talk about national sports too much on this show, other than when Scotty brings it up on his segments. But Monday I broke my national sports silence because I wanted to talk about this for a minute. And I had a spiel about it, and I stand by what I said. I don't think Florida State's a top 4 team right now. I watched them for 2 weeks without Jordan Travis. They didn't look anywhere close to this. They had 2 chances to kind of go out there and prove we can still be an offense that can hold up against a Michigan or a Texas or a Washington's defense and compete. And they didn't. Their offense looked like a wet match in a dark cave. That's how I worded it in the last 2 games against Florida and Louisville. And Louisville's defense is not great. They gave up 38 to Kentucky the week before. So it's not like they were going up against a stacked defense that had a bunch of talented kids. No, this was a Louisville defense. They won a Louisville team that won with offense all year. They won with their offense, and props to Florida State's defense. I get what people are saying. They won with their defense. Their defense is elite, but when you get to the discussion of top 4, is having a one-sided elite defense enough to say you're a top 4 team in the country? I didn't think it was. In my humble opinion, Florida State was not one of the top 4 teams in the country, so I wasn't too upset that they didn't get in. Do I think that Alabama necessarily is? But Alabama has their quarterback now, and that's going to be a big difference when I look at those 2 teams. Because Alabama, they did have to have a prayer against Auburn just to win that game. So I'm not going to be blind and say that Alabama is levels above Florida State. But Alabama is a more complete team now because they have their quarterback who's pretty dang good and had to make that throw to beat Auburn. When I look at it, guys, to be naive enough to think the money has nothing to do with it would be silly. But I'm not also going to go on that spectrum of some of the people I've seen that think that there's like some guy in the room with the committee that puts a check down and says, no, Alabama's in because I say so, because the money says so. Like, I think there are football people in that room. There are 5 coaches on the committee that made football decisions, that had football say. I think football-wise, if you watch the 2 teams and really, really watch them without the goggles. I know up here we're in Big Ten country, so they hate the SEC. So there are some of those bias goggles on their end to say, they don't want Alabama in the play. They don't want SEC in the playoffs. I'd hate to tell you, but next year when we get to 12, if what the SEC is going to look like next year with Oklahoma and Texas in there, SEC is going to have 6 teams in the 12 because they got Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Missouri would all be in the, well, not LSU, Missouri, Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia, and then next year Texas and Oklahoma. That's all. It's going to be an SEC playoff next year if everything goes the way that it probably will next year too. Like you're going to see 5 or 6 teams in the SEC in your top 12. So don't think that this is going to solve your problem with SEC bias. It's just a good football conference, and it's going to get a lot of teams in the playoffs next year too. And there's still going to be a problem with the 13 and 14 teams. Like this year, if it was 12, I'm sure we'd hear a lot of crap from LSU and Arizona and maybe Louisville. Oh, we deserve to get in. We got to our conference playoffs or whatever it may be. But we're always going to hear people that think they deserve to get in that are just up below the cutting point. You're going to have that every time you have one cutting point. We have it in March Madness, and there's 64 teams. We have teams that think they should get in.
Are they just doing a committee? Is the committee picking the 12?
I think they're doing the same, as far as I know, they're doing the same routine, just expanding it. Like that's as far as I know. Let's remember, we wanted this too. We had a computer ranking that spit out analytics and said wins are wins. Here you go. We're not going by eye test at all. Computer rankings, BCS, there you go. And we didn't want that. We wanted the human factor. We wanted to be able to say not every win is equal. And that's what we got. We got Florida State's wins that didn't look great against Louisville, not equal to Alabama beating Georgia. And we wanted it. Like, let's not forget that we cried for it when we had the BCS.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, I don't know, everybody, I think in the past, so used to, if you're an undefeated college team, then you deserve to be, number one team or one of the best, and you deserve a chance. I don't know. I didn't watch any Florida State this year, so I don't know anything about them. They did get 3 wins over top 15 teams. They got a great resume.
But they 2 out of those 3 were with Jordan Travis on the team.
Right. But should that come into account,
The argument was that they're a completely different team without Jordan Travis. Whether you buy that or not, that's what the committee said in their interview of why we picked. Right. They said, hey, Florida State without Jordan Travis, they look a lot different. They're not the same team. So you kind of when they say that, every win they got with him has to go out the window in your arguments. Because they feel like they're not the same team without him. And they're not.
Yeah, and it's having the computer points is a lot easier. It's just numbers.
They'd probably be in. If it was BCS rankings, I mean, I'd be interested to see, like, the BCS algorithm still has to be out there somewhere. I'd be interested to see what the BCS would rank these teams.
And wasn't that the BCS, if I'm remembering right, that was pretty. It was flawed though.
It was flawed. It wasn't
the way that they used the numbers was. I can remember it thinking, why was it done the way it is? There's got to be a better way now to take every single game and every single team and everything into account. There has to be a better way. You say you want the human element in there to know what's best, and then people get upset because a team that lost one gets in over a team that's undefeated. Not all records are created equal, and not all undefeated teams are created equal. Not an A from a community college, is that the same as Harvard? I wouldn't try to argue that point. Well, all I'm saying is you're going to be upset if the human element is there, and if there are numbers, you're going to be upset too, but just in a different way. So expand the stinking playoffs, let as many teams in as possible, and then let the best team win and take all this out of it. Like you said, the March Madness is 64 teams and teams are crying, but I don't think there's ever been a potential national champion left out of the March Madness.
But you also think, like, realistically, do teams in the top 12 have a chance to win the national championship? I wouldn't think so. I think once you get past 6, Georgia, who I think if you're saying best 4 teams to be real, Georgia's probably in there.
Yeah.
Like, they lost to Alabama by 3 once in a neutral site, and all of a sudden they dropped from 1 to 6, and you're going to say best 4 teams. Like, I get why Texas is in there because they beat Alabama back in week 2. But to be real, like, if you're really going to say best 4 teams, as much as I hate it because I'm a Tech fan, Georgia's probably in there. They're probably one of the best 4 teams in the country. They would have been a riot if they put 2 SEC teams in there.
Yeah, it makes you think about those. YSU teams, those Youngstown State teams, they won 4 national titles with Tressel. I think one of the times they were the 13 seed.
Right.
So
you just never know because you have to
Yeah.
play the game. But if we were just doing it on paper, I think anyone past Georgia, their chances of beating these teams, not great. But you could argue Ohio State because they had their chances to beat Michigan. I mean, they were in that game. They didn't get blown out. So you could argue that even Oregon, who lost to number 2 by 3, they would have a shot. But then you go Missouri, Penn State, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma. Those are the 4 that would round out the top 12 this year. Probably out of that realm of teams that you would give a chance to win the national championship. But they're still good enough to have their day. That's all it takes. Don't have to be the better team, Gary. You know this as a coach. You just have to be the better team that night. That's all that matters,
Exactly.
And in college, the younger you go, the easier that is because the less mature these kids are, and you could be better one night. What makes me the most mad, I know we're getting a little bit of overtime, but it's okay because there's no show at 2:00 on YSN. What makes me frustrated is the committee will make one decision for one reason and then feel like they're doing the opposite for another decision. And I just want consistency. Like that's the thing that I want more than like if you're gonna say best team in, that's fine. But then like when you go down to SMU and Liberty, it's the same situation. One team lost a quarterback and is hurt, and probably not the same team, and the other is, but they flipped their argument and they put Liberty ahead of SMU. And you're thinking, wait a minute, you screwed Florida State because they lost their quarterback, and they're not the same team. But this team down here that's still ranked. I mean, I know it doesn't matter because top 4 is all that matters in these rankings anyway. But you kind of gave Liberty the benefit of the doubt when they got the injury. So it's like, why are you being inconsistent that way? I don't mind the inconsistency year to year because it's different people in the room every year. But inconsistency in your rankings from team to team and using one argument for one side of a team and then using a completely different, moving the goalposts for another ranking, that's what makes me a little bit upset.
I guess they'll be justified if Alabama wins it all, right?
Yep, Alabama wins it all. People are gonna, have to shut up a little bit because obviously, if you win it all, you deserve to be in the top 4. And well, they wouldn't shut up. But what will really shut people up is if Georgia just smacks the crap out of Florida State, and they're like, guys, they weren't top 4. Then people will say, well, they weren't getting up for that game because they didn't care because it wasn't a playoff game.
Right.
But still, I think if Georgia comes in and just beats up Florida State, what can you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, if that happens, then I don't know. If that happens and then Alabama wins it all, then they'll be right, and everybody will just be looking forward to next year. I don't know.
I'm rooting for chaos. I hope one of the teams that no one's given a chance wins. I hope Washington or Texas comes away with the championship, and we just end it that way. Because everyone's talking about Michigan versus Alabama. They have to play each other, so one of them's not going to win.
Right.
But everyone pretty much has already said the winner of that game wins the championship, and they're just kind of tossing this 2 versus 3 out the wayside. So I'm rooting for chaos. I hope Washington or Texas gets to win.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be
Scotty, who you rooting for? You gotta.
Yeah, I'd like if I had to pick a team. Now I just want to see good games, but you always want to root for somebody. And if I had to pick a team, it's Washington. I've really had fun this year watching Michael Penix Jr. So
Washington hasn't won a title since 1991, and I believe that one was shared. That was back when they did the poll champions winning the national championship. Imagine if we were still in that age, how mad social media would be if you just won the poll and you were national champion. That's it. No game.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, you just won the poll. And then if someone else won the other poll, you shared a national championship. That happened in back-to-back years in 1990 and 1991. Go figure.
And then I think Michigan, the last time they won, I think they shared it.
Right. So it's just like, hey, you know what? You're going to share a national championship. That would be wild in the social media era. But all that being said, I digress and I go into the outro of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Gary, thanks for coming on every week. We'll see you next week on Wrestling Wednesday, episode 3. Scotty, as always, thank you for coming on every Wednesday as well. throughout the whole Running Point season from and well, actually, we're on every day. So from from June to June. Thanks for coming on, Scotty. And Gary, we'll see you next week. And everyone else, we'll see you all tomorrow from 1 to 2 on Running Point, brought to you, as always, by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown.